The day was bright and sunny, with a gentle breeze stirring the leaves as Emma prepared her family's small yard for a relaxing afternoon. Her 1-year-old son, Leo, had recently started taking his first steps, and Emma watched him closely as he tottered around the yard, exploring with the innocent curiosity only a baby could have. Emma loved these precious moments with her son, basking in the joy of his laughter as he discovered the world around him. In the corner of their yard was a small pond, which Emma and her husband had carefully fenced off to keep Leo safe. It was a peaceful spot where Emma liked to sit and watch the fish, and she had always taken extra precautions to ensure it wasn't accessible to their young, adventurous son. Yet, as every parent knows, a moment's distraction can change everything. That afternoon, Emma received an unexpected phone call from her mother. She turned her back for just a few seconds, speaking briefly as she glanced over at Leo, who was happily waddling around a safe distance from the pond. But then, as she continued her conversation, Emma failed to notice when Leo stumbled forward, his tiny feet taking him closer and closer to the fence. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, a stray dog wandered the streets. His coat was a mix of brown and black, unkempt and dirty from days, perhaps weeks, without a home. The dog had no collar, no sign of ownership, and the people who saw him would often shoo him away, thinking he was just another stray scavenging for scraps. But this dog was different. He was alert, his eyes sharp as he roamed the neighborhood, almost as if he were searching for something or someone. As Emma continued her conversation, she glanced over her shoulder, her heart suddenly sinking as she noticed the empty space where Leo had been standing. Panic gripped her as she scanned the yard, and then she saw it. Leo had somehow squeezed through a small gap in the fence and was standing dangerously close to the pond's edge. Her heart pounded as she dropped the phone and ran toward him, her feet feeling like lead as she rushed across the yard. But before Emma could reach him, Leo's tiny foot slipped, and he toppled forward, disappearing into the water with a small splash. Emma screamed, her voice filled with terror as she raced toward the pond, desperate to save her son. But as she reached the edge, a sudden movement caught her eye, a blur of brown and black that seemed to appear out of nowhere. It was the stray dog, his eyes locked on the pond, his body tense and alert. Emma watched in disbelief as the dog lunged forward, plunging into the water with a determination that defied his small, scrappy frame. He swam toward Leo with surprising speed, his legs moving with a strength that seemed impossible for a stray dog. In the water, Leo was sinking, his tiny hands flailing as he struggled to keep his head above the surface. The dog reached him in seconds, his jaws carefully closing around the collar of Leo's shirt. With a careful, calculated motion, the dog lifted Leo, keeping the child's head above water as he paddled back toward the edge of the pond. Emma, still frozen in shock, felt tears streaming down her face as she watched the dog drag Leo toward safety. She reached down, her hands trembling as she pulled her son from the water, clutching him tightly against her chest. Leo's face was pale, his eyes wide with fear, but he was safe. He coughed, sputtering as he took a breath, his small body shivering as Emma held him close, whispering words of comfort and relief. As she looked up, her eyes met the dog's. He stood at the edge of the pond, his coat soaked, water dripping from his nose as he looked at her with an intensity that took her breath away. There was something almost human in his gaze, a depth of understanding that defied explanation. He had risked his life for her son, a stranger with no hesitation. Emma extended her hand, her voice shaking as she whispered, "Thank you." The dog stepped back, his gaze softening as if he understood her gratitude. But before she could say or do anything more, he turned and disappeared into the trees, leaving Emma alone with her son and the memory of a miracle she could barely believe. Later that evening, after calming down from the shock of the afternoon, Emma told her husband about what had happened. He listened, his face pale with disbelief, his hand gripping hers as she described the stray dog who had appeared out of nowhere to save their son. "It's like he knew," she said, her voice filled with wonder. "He knew exactly what to do, like he was meant to be there." They searched the neighborhood for the dog that night, hoping to find him and bring him home as a permanent part of their family. But despite their efforts, the dog was nowhere to be found. The neighbors, too, were shocked when they heard the story, amazed by the bravery of the stray who had saved young Leo. People spoke of him as a hero, a guardian angel in the form of a scruffy dog who had appeared just when he was needed most. Days turned into weeks, and though Emma and her family continued to search, the stray dog never returned. But the memory of his courage and kindness remained, a story that became legend in the neighborhood. Children would talk about the guardian dog who had saved a baby, and parents shared the tale as a reminder of the unexpected heroes that sometimes come into our lives. Emma often found herself thinking of the dog, wondering where he had come from and what had driven him to act so selflessly. She felt a deep gratitude for him, a connection that would never fade, knowing that her son was alive because of the bravery of a stray who had chosen, if only for a moment, to be a hero. And though the dog was gone, his spirit lived on in the story, a reminder that sometimes the greatest acts of courage come from the most unlikely places. Emma would often tell Leo about his guardian angel, the dog who had saved him when he was just a baby, teaching him the value of kindness, courage, and gratitude. The story of the stray dog's bravery quickly spread through the neighborhood, capturing the imagination of everyone who heard it. Neighbors, friends, and even strangers came to Emma's home, wanting to hear the first-hand account of how a stray dog had saved her son's life. Each time Emma retold the story, she would pause, her voice filled with emotion, as she described the moment the dog appeared out of nowhere, his determined eyes fixed on Leo as he leapt into the water. People would listen, their faces filled with wonder, murmuring that it sounded like something out of a fairy tale. But for Emma, it was very real. She couldn't shake the memory of the dog's intense gaze, the way he had seemed to understand the danger, acting with a purpose that still left her awestruck. As days went by, her determination to find the dog only grew. She wanted to give him a home, to repay the kindness he had shown her family. In her heart, Emma felt that the dog belonged with them. He had saved Leo's life. Surely, he deserved a place in their home. Emma and her husband Tom spent every free moment searching for the dog. They walked through the neighborhood, asking anyone they saw if they had caught a glimpse of the stray. Some neighbors reported seeing a scruffy brown and black dog wandering near the park or along the wooded path by the river. But no one knew where he had come from or where he might have gone. Tom even printed flyers, posting them on trees, lampposts, and community boards, each one featuring a sketch of the dog based on Emma's description. The flyer read, "Hero Dog, looking for the stray dog who saved our son's life. We want to give him a loving home. Please contact us if you've seen him." The community rallied behind their search, many people eager to help after hearing the remarkable story. Children would keep an eye out for the dog on their way to school, and families walking in the park would call out in hopes of spotting the mysterious hero. One afternoon, Emma received a call from an older woman named Mrs. Jenkins, who lived near the edge of town. "I think I saw him," she said, her voice warm and kind. "There was a stray dog that came by my yard yesterday. He looked scruffy, like he hadn't had a bath in a while. He just sat there, watching me with these big, thoughtful eyes. I fed him some scraps, but he left before I could get a closer look." Emma's heart leapt with hope. She quickly gathered Leo and set off with Tom to Mrs. Jenkins's house, hoping that the dog might still be in the area. When they arrived, Mrs. Jenkins pointed them toward a small trail that led into the woods behind her house. "He went that way," she said with a gentle smile. "I don't know if he's still around, but it's worth a try." They followed the trail, calling out for the dog, their voices echoing through the trees. But after an hour of searching, they found no trace of him. Emma's heart sank as they returned home, but she refused to give up. The dog had risked his life for her son. She was determined to find him, no matter how long it took. Over the following days, Emma and Tom continued their search, venturing further each time. They walked through the nearby parks, the wooded areas, and even the riverbanks where some people claimed to have seen a stray, matching his description. Each time, they came back empty-handed, but Emma's resolve only grew stronger. Then, one evening, as Emma was sitting on the porch watching Leo play in the yard, she spotted a movement at the edge of the trees. Her breath caught as she saw the familiar figure of a dog, his brown and black coat unmistakable, standing just beyond the fence. She rose slowly, her heart pounding, and called out softly, "It's you, isn't it? The hero dog." The dog didn't move, his eyes fixed on her with a cautious intensity. He seemed both curious and wary, as if unsure whether he was truly welcome. Emma knelt down, her voice gentle and inviting. "It's okay, you saved Leo's life. We want you here, please, come closer." The dog took a tentative step forward, his body tense, his gaze flicking between Emma and Leo, who was now watching with wide eyes. Leo recognized his rescuer, his small face lighting up with joy. "Doggy," he called, his voice filled with innocent delight. The dog's ears perked up at the sound of Leo's voice, and he took another step closer, his gaze softening. Emma could see the hesitation in his eyes, the wariness of a stray who had likely known little kindness. She reached out a hand, holding it steady as she whispered, "It's okay, boy, you're safe here." Slowly, cautiously, the dog moved closer, his eyes filled with a mixture of trust and uncertainty. When he was finally within reach, Emma gently stroked his head, her heart swelling with gratitude as she felt the warmth of his fur beneath her hand. The dog closed his eyes, leaning into her touch as if he had finally found a place where he belonged. Over the next few days, the dog began to spend more time around Emma's home, though he never stayed for long. He would come in the mornings, watching over Leo as he played in the yard, his eyes always alert, his posture protective. Emma and Tom fed him, gave him water, and slowly the dog began to trust them, allowing them to pet him, to speak softly to him, to show him the kindness he had likely never known. The neighbors were overjoyed to hear that the hero dog had returned, many of them stopping by to meet the brave animal who had saved young Leo. Children would gather at the fence, their eyes filled with wonder as they watched the dog, now known as Guardian, standing proudly by Leo's side. Though he remained cautious, Guardian allowed them to come closer, his eyes soft and gentle as he watched the children, as if sensing their admiration. Emma felt a deep bond forming between her family and Guardian. She knew that he had come into their lives for a reason, that he was more than just a stray dog. He was a protector, a friend, and a reminder that kindness and bravery could come from the most unexpected places. But despite the love and comfort he had found with Emma's family, Guardian never lost his independent spirit. He would stay for a while, accepting their food and affection, but by evening he would disappear into the woods, returning only when he felt the need to watch over them. Emma often wondered where he went, what his life had been before he had saved Leo, but she respected his need for freedom, understanding that Guardian's loyalty was a gift she could not hold too tightly. And so, the legend of Guardian grew. He was the stray who had saved a child's life, the dog who had appeared when he was needed most, and the hero who watched over the neighborhood from the shadows. Children would tell stories of him, imagining that he was a magical creature, a guardian angel in disguise. Parents would smile, knowing that the stories held a truth that went beyond imagination. In her heart, Emma knew that Guardian was more than a legend. He was real, and his courage had changed their lives forever. She often whispered a prayer of thanks for the day he had appeared, knowing that her family was forever blessed by the love and loyalty of a stray dog who had become their hero. As time passed, Guardian's visits became more frequent. Each morning, he would appear at the edge of the yard, his calm gaze searching for Leo, as if making sure the child was safe. Emma's heart warmed each time she saw him approach, her admiration for the heroic dog growing with every visit. She found herself leaving the back door open, hoping that Guardian would feel welcome enough to come inside and make their home his own. Leo, who had once been wary of large animals, had grown completely attached to Guardian. The little boy would squeal with joy each time Guardian arrived, rushing to his side and wrapping his small arms around the dog's neck in a hug. Guardian, in turn, would stand still, his eyes soft as he allowed Leo's tiny fingers to tangle in his fur. His patience with the child was extraordinary, his every movement gentle, as though he understood the need to be careful with someone so small. One chilly afternoon, as autumn leaves swirled around the yard, Emma sat on the porch, watching Leo and Guardian play. She marveled at the quiet loyalty Guardian displayed, his watchful presence making her feel safer than ever. She couldn't explain it, but there was a sense of peace that had settled over their home since Guardian's arrival, a calm assurance that everything would be okay as long as he was there. Tom, too, had grown fond of Guardian. He was initially skeptical of having a stray around their young son, but Guardian's actions had erased any doubts. One evening, Tom set up a small bed for Guardian on the porch, hoping the dog would take it as a sign that he was welcome to stay as long as he wanted. Guardian sniffed the blankets and pillows, his eyes bright with curiosity, and gave a contented sigh as he settled down, stretching his legs out comfortably. It was the first time he had rested on their property, as if finally accepting that this was his home. Despite his growing attachment, Guardian never completely gave up his independence. Each night, after Emma and Tom had gone to bed and the house was quiet, Guardian would rise from his spot on the porch and disappear into the woods. He would return in the morning, his coat damp from the night's adventures but his eyes steady and calm. Emma often wondered where he went, what he did during those hours away, but she respected his need for freedom, understanding that Guardian was a creature of both loyalty and mystery. One morning, as Emma was preparing breakfast, she noticed a scratch on Guardian's leg, a small wound that looked fresh. Concerned, she knelt beside him, gently examining the cut. Guardian held still, his eyes watching her with trust as she cleaned the wound and applied ointment. It was a simple act, but it felt profound. Emma realized that Guardian had given her his trust, that he had let down his guard and allowed her to care for him in a way that went beyond words. From that day on, Guardian's relationship with the family deepened. He began spending more time indoors, often curling up beside Leo's crib during nap time, his ears perked and alert. Emma would find him there, lying peacefully, his gaze never leaving the child. It was as though he had taken it upon himself to be Leo's guardian, a role he fulfilled with quiet dedication. The neighbors, too, noticed Guardian's loyalty. The once mysterious stray had become a beloved part of the community, a symbol of resilience and bravery. Children would bring him treats, leaving them by the porch, and some of the elderly residents would stop by to pet him, their hands gentle on his rough coat as they murmured words of gratitude for his bravery. Guardian accepted these gestures with quiet dignity, his eyes filled with the same gentle kindness that had first drawn Emma to him. One crisp autumn evening, Emma decided to take a walk with Leo and Guardian through the neighborhood. She watched as Leo held Guardian's fur, his tiny steps matching the dog's measured pace. Guardian walked proudly beside him, his head held high, his gaze scanning the surroundings as if he were always on alert. The sight of them together filled Emma with gratitude, a deep appreciation for the unexpected hero who had changed their lives. As they walked, a familiar voice called out from across the street. It was Mrs. Jenkins, the elderly woman who had first seen Guardian near her yard. She waved them over, her eyes twinkling with warmth as she looked at Guardian. "He's a blessing, that one," she said, her voice filled with admiration. "Not many would do what he did. You're lucky to have him." Emma smiled, nodding in agreement. "We are. He's more than just a dog. He's part of our family." Mrs. Jenkins chuckled, reaching out to scratch Guardian behind the ears. "He's not just any dog. He's a guardian angel, if you ask me." As they continued their walk, Emma couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. Guardian's presence had transformed their lives in ways she hadn't anticipated. He had brought not only protection but also a sense of unity and hope that had spread through their family and into the community. The dog, who had once been a stranger, was now their protector, their friend, their guardian. That night, as they settled in for bed, Emma found herself reflecting on the journey they had taken since Guardian first appeared. She felt a deep sense of peace, knowing that Leo was safe, and that their family was watched over by the loyal dog who had come into their lives at the perfect moment. And though Guardian still slipped away into the woods each night, Emma trusted that he would always return, that he had found his purpose with them. As winter approached, Emma and Tom prepared their home, adding extra blankets to Guardian's bed on the porch and ensuring he had plenty of food to keep his strength up. Guardian accepted these small gestures with quiet appreciation, his eyes filled with a gratitude that went beyond words. He seemed to understand that he was loved, that he belonged with them, and his loyalty only grew stronger. One snowy evening, Emma heard a soft bark outside her window. She looked out to see Guardian standing by the fence, his gaze fixed on something in the distance. Curious, she joined him, peering into the darkness. She couldn't see anything unusual, but Guardian's posture was tense, his ears pricked as he watched the trees. She placed a hand on his back, her heart filled with trust in his instincts. After a few moments, Guardian relaxed, as if whatever had caught his attention was no longer a threat. Emma felt a wave of reassurance, a reminder that Guardian was always there, watching, ready to protect them if needed. She whispered a quiet thank you, her voice filled with love as she stroked his fur. Guardian looked up at her, his eyes warm and understanding, and in that moment Emma knew that he was more than just a dog. He was family, a part of their lives that she could never imagine being without. His bravery, his loyalty, and his quiet strength had become the foundation of their home, a presence that brought peace and safety in ways words could not express. The winter deepened, casting a blanket of snow over the neighborhood. Guardian, his thick coat protecting him from the cold, continued his daily visits, faithfully watching over Leo and his family. Emma often found him lying by the porch, his watchful eyes following her every move as she went about her day. Guardian had become more than a friend to the family. He was their protector, their silent guardian, always present and ready. One evening, as the soft snow began to fall, Emma and Tom were busy preparing dinner when they heard a soft cry coming from the backyard. Leo was playing near the window, His small hands pressed against the glass as he looked out at the snowy landscape. Emma glanced over, expecting to see Guardian outside, but instead, she saw something that made her heart skip a beat. There, standing just beyond the porch, was a figure. A man dressed in dark clothes, his face partially obscured by a hood. He was looking directly at Leo, his expression unreadable. The stranger's presence sent a chill down Emma's spine, and she quickly moved to shield Leo, her heart racing as she tried to process what she was seeing. Before she could react, Guardian appeared, emerging from the shadows with a low growl that rumbled through the air. His stance was tense, his gaze locked on the intruder. Every muscle in his body coiled as if ready to spring into action. The stranger took a step back, clearly taken aback by the dog's sudden appearance. Emma felt a surge of relief as she watched Guardian position himself between the stranger and her family, his protective stance unmistakable. Tom joined her, his arm around her shoulders as they watched in tense silence, trusting Guardian to handle the situation. The man hesitated, his gaze flicking from Guardian to the house, his expression turning wary. He seemed to realize that he was no match for the determined dog, and with one last glance at the family, he turned and disappeared into the shadows. Guardian watched him go, his growl fading as he relaxed, his posture softening as the stranger was out of sight. Emma opened the door and knelt down, her hands trembling as she embraced Guardian, whispering words of gratitude. "Thank you, Guardian," she murmured, her voice filled with emotion. "You protected us again." Tom knelt beside her, his hand resting on Guardian's head as he looked into the dog's loyal eyes. "You're our hero, Guardian. You'll always be part of this family." That night, they made a decision. They would no longer let Guardian wander off each evening. From now on, their door would remain open for him, a permanent place where he could rest, warm and safe, knowing he had a family who loved him. They set up a bed for him inside the house, complete with blankets and a soft pillow, making it clear that he was welcome to stay forever. Guardian seemed to understand the gesture. He lay down on his new bed with a contented sigh, his eyes closing as he settled in, finally allowing himself to relax completely. For the first time, he didn't slip away into the night. He remained by their side, his presence filling the house with a sense of peace and protection. The family's decision to bring Guardian fully into their home was met with joy from the community. Neighbors stopped by to congratulate them, bringing treats and toys for Guardian, who accepted the gifts with quiet dignity. He had become a beloved figure in the neighborhood, his bravery and loyalty admired by everyone who knew the story of how he had saved Leo's life. Winter gave way to spring, and the snow melted, revealing fresh green grass and blossoming flowers. Guardian's days were now filled with play and companionship. He spent every moment with Leo, following him around the yard, watching over him as he explored, his eyes filled with the love and loyalty that had come to define their relationship. One afternoon, as Emma watched from the kitchen window, she noticed Leo and Guardian playing a new game. Leo would run a few steps ahead, then turn and call, "Guardian, come save me." The dog would respond instantly, bounding over to the boy, his tail wagging as he nudged Leo with his nose. Emma's heart swelled with pride and gratitude, her eyes misting over as she watched the bond between them. But even as Guardian embraced his new life as a cherished family member, he never lost his instincts. He remained vigilant, his watchful gaze scanning the yard, always alert for any sign of danger. He was their protector, a role he had taken upon himself, and he carried it out with a quiet strength that brought comfort to everyone around him. One warm evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Emma sat on the porch with Guardian by her side. She stroked his fur, her voice soft as she spoke to him. "You're more than a dog, Guardian. You're family. You've given us so much. Your loyalty, your bravery, your love. We can never thank you enough." Guardian looked up at her, his eyes filled with an understanding that seemed almost human. He rested his head on her lap, his body relaxed, his heart open to the family who had embraced him. He had found his place, his purpose, and he knew that he would never have to face the world alone again. As summer arrived, the family's life settled into a new rhythm, with Guardian at the center of it all. He accompanied them on picnics, family gatherings, and evening walks, his presence a constant source of joy and security. Neighbors would often wave as they passed, smiling at the sight of Guardian walking proudly beside his family, his head held high, his loyalty unmistakable. The story of Guardian's bravery became a cherished tale in the neighborhood, passed down from one family to the next. Children would listen in awe as their parents recounted the day a stray dog had saved a baby's life, their eyes wide with wonder as they imagined the hero dog who had come to protect them. For Emma, Tom, and Leo, Guardian was more than a hero. He was a symbol of love, loyalty, and resilience. He had come into their lives at a time of need, bringing with him a strength that went beyond words. And as they sat together in the yard, watching the sun set over their home, they knew that Guardian would always be with them, a part of their family forever. As the years passed, Guardian's presence remained a constant source of love and protection in Leo's life. The once lost stray had become a cherished member of the family, his loyalty and bravery inspiring everyone who knew him. Leo grew from a toddler into a young boy, with Guardian by his side through every milestone. He had come to see the dog not just as a pet, but as a friend, a protector, and a member of the family who understood him in ways words couldn't express. Guardian's watchful eyes followed Leo everywhere he went. Whether it was playing in the backyard, walking to school, or exploring the neighborhood, Guardian was always there, his posture relaxed but his gaze alert. Over time, Leo learned the story of how Guardian had saved his life as a baby. Emma and Tom would tell him the tale with pride, their voices filled with gratitude as they recounted the day Guardian had appeared from nowhere to pull him from the pond. Leo listened with wide eyes, the story becoming part of his own identity, a reminder of the bond he shared with Guardian. As Leo grew older, he began to tell the story himself, sharing it with friends who visited and neighbors who asked about Guardian's past. He would talk about how Guardian was no ordinary dog, that he was a hero who had come into his life for a reason. Leo's friends would listen in awe, their admiration for Guardian growing as they learned about his bravery. One warm summer day, as Leo and Guardian lay under the shade of a tree in the backyard, Leo rested his head against Guardian's side, feeling the rise and fall of his gentle breaths. "You saved me, Guardian," he whispered, his voice filled with a quiet reverence. "I wouldn't be here if it weren't for you." Guardian lifted his head, his eyes meeting Leo's with a warmth that seemed to say, "I'll always be here for you." In that moment, Leo understood the depth of Guardian's loyalty, the quiet strength that had defined his life. He wrapped his arms around the dog's neck, hugging him tightly as if to convey all the gratitude he felt. As the seasons changed and years passed, Guardian began to slow down. His once lively steps became more measured, his playful runs through the yard replaced by leisurely strolls. His muzzle turned gray, and his movements grew stiff, but his spirit remained as strong as ever. Even as he aged, Guardian continued to watch over his family with the same dedication, his loyalty undiminished by the passage of time. The family knew that Guardian's time with them was drawing to a close, and they cherished every moment, ensuring he was surrounded by love and comfort. they set up a soft bed for him in the living room, giving him a view of the yard where he had spent so many happy days with Leo. Emma and Tom would sit with him in the evenings, stroking his fur and whispering words of gratitude, their hearts full of appreciation for the dog who had changed their lives. One quiet evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Guardian lay peacefully on his bed, his eyes half closed as he watched Leo playing nearby. The room was filled with a gentle warmth, a sense of peace that seemed to settle over them like a soft blanket. Guardian's breaths grew slower, his gaze softening as he looked at his family, his heart filled with love for the life he had been given. Leo knelt beside him, his eyes filled with tears as he rested his hand on Guardian's head. "Thank you, Guardian," he whispered, his voice trembling with emotion. "You'll always be my hero." Guardian's eyes met Leo's one last time, a final look of love and understanding passing between them. His body relaxed, his breathing slowing as he slipped away peacefully, surrounded by the family he had protected and loved with all his heart. They buried Guardian in the backyard, under the tree where he had spent so many happy days. The family placed a small stone at the base of the tree, engraved with the words, "Guardian, our loyal hero and friend." It was a simple tribute, but it carried the weight of all the memories, love, and gratitude they felt for the dog who had given them so much. In the years that followed, Guardian's memory remained alive in the hearts of everyone who had known him. Leo, now grown, often visited the tree, sitting quietly and reflecting on the bond he had shared with his loyal friend. He would tell stories about Guardian to his own children, sharing the tale of the stray who had saved his life and become a hero. Guardian's legacy became part of the family's story, a reminder of the love and loyalty that had shaped their lives. The tree where Guardian was laid to rest grew tall and strong, its branches providing shade to the yard where children played, friends gathered, and memories were made. The family would often sit beneath its canopy, sharing stories and laughing, their hearts filled with gratitude for the dog who had brought them together in ways they never expected. As new families moved into the neighborhood, the story of Guardian lived on, passed down from one generation to the next. Children would listen wide-eyed as their parents told them about the brave dog who had once saved a baby's life, his loyalty as unwavering as his courage. The story became a cherished legend, a symbol of the bonds that transcend time, a reminder of the unexpected heroes who come into our lives and change them forever. In quiet moments, as the sun set over the yard, Leo would look up at the sky, his heart filled with love and gratitude for the friend who had been there through it all. He knew that Guardian's spirit would always be with him, a constant presence, a reminder of the courage and love that had shaped his life. And so, Guardian's legacy endured, a story of loyalty, bravery, and the unbreakable bond between a boy and his dog. It was a tale that would live on, a reminder that sometimes the greatest heroes are those who come into our lives when we least expect it, leaving a mark that lasts a lifetime. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this inspiring story with someone who believes in the power of loyalty.